The election of Donald Trump as President of the United States introduced significant uncertainty in international trade, particularly with key North American partners. One of the most controversial promises made by the president-elect was his intention to impose a 25% tariff on imports from Canada and Mexico, including crude oil, two of the largest oil suppliers to the United States. This policy, aimed at protecting domestic industries and addressing trade imbalances, raised concerns about its potential economic impact on both sides of the border. Canada and Mexico together supply over half of all U.S. crude oil imports. Canada alone provides approximately 3.8 million barrels per day, making up more than 50% of total imports. Mexico, the second largest supplier, contributes billions of dollars worth of heavy crude oil annually to U.S. refineries, which rely heavily on these imports to meet domestic energy needs. The proposed tariffs threaten to disrupt this crucial supply chain, potentially leading to higher energy costs for American consumers and industries while destabilizing the economies of two key U.S. trading partners. Additionally, the tariffs could strain the long-standing economic relationships fostered under the USMCA, United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, and provoke retaliatory measures, with Canada and Mexico exploring counter-strategies to protect their national interests. This brewing trade dispute highlights the intricate interdependence of North American energy markets and underscores the broader risks of escalating protectionist policies in an increasingly integrated global economy. In response to the proposed tariffs, Canada is weighing potential countermeasures, including a drastic option, reducing or halting oil exports to the U.S. Such a move could have far-reaching consequences. In this video we will delve into these developments, examining the background of this situation, the implications for both countries, and the potential impact on the energy market and trade relations. Canada's role as a major energy supplier to the U.S. cannot be overstated. As of 2023, Canada accounted for approximately 62% of all U.S. crude oil imports, making it by far the largest foreign supplier. Every day, Canada exports about 3.8 million barrels of crude oil to the U.S., constituting more than half of Canada's total crude oil production. Beyond crude oil, Canadian natural gas accounts for roughly 25% of U.S. imports, primarily used for heating homes and powering industries in northern states. Electricity, too, forms a significant part of Canada's energy exports, with provinces like Quebec, Manitoba, and Ontario providing hydroelectric power to U.S. states such as Michigan, New York, and Vermont. These interconnected electricity grids demonstrate the depth of energy trade between the two countries, contributing over $100 billion annually to Canada's GDP and supporting hundreds of thousands of jobs across the country. Alberta, the heart of Canada's oil production, produces around 80% of the crude oil exported to the U.S. Its oil sands alone represent one of the largest crude oil reserves globally, underscoring the scale of Canada's energy industry. Given the potential imposition of tariffs, Canadian officials are considering a range of countermeasures, with cutting oil exports being one of the most drastic options. Ontario Premier Doug Ford has been vocal about using energy as leverage, suggesting a halt to electricity exports to the U.S., which could affect around 1.5 million American consumers, particularly in Michigan and Wisconsin, states that depend heavily on Canadian energy. However, Alberta Premier Danielle Smith has opposed the idea of cutting oil exports, warning that it could cause significant harm to the Canadian economy, particularly as Alberta produces the vast majority of the crude oil exported to the U.S. Her stance is crucial, as such a move could destabilize Canada's energy sector, lead to revenue losses, job cuts, and even disrupt domestic politics. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has taken a more cautious approach, stressing the importance of a measured and proportionate response. The federal government has been exploring alternative retaliatory measures, such as targeted tariffs on U.S. goods like steel, aluminum, and orange juice. This multifaceted approach aims to protect Canada's economic interests while avoiding unnecessary escalation. Reducing or halting oil exports to the U.S. would have profound economic and political consequences for both countries. For the U.S., it would disrupt energy supply chains, causing shortages and higher energy prices, particularly in states like Michigan, Minnesota, and Wisconsin, which rely heavily on Canadian crude oil and electricity. These disruptions could ripple through the U.S. economy, especially in industries that depend on affordable energy. For Canada, such a reduction would severely impact its revenue from crude oil exports, slowing GDP growth, increasing unemployment in the energy sector, and straining provincial budgets. Alberta would bear the brunt of these effects, exacerbating tensions with the federal government. The economic fallout could also lead to inflation, complicating Canada's domestic economic landscape. The political implications could also be destabilizing. Cutting oil exports would likely strain Canada-US relations, undermining the cooperative framework of the USMCA and potentially prompting retaliatory actions from the US. This would escalate the trade dispute and diminish the chances of a negotiated resolution. Given the risks of cutting oil exports, Canada is exploring alternative measures. One option is imposing retaliatory tariffs on U.S. goods critical to specific states, reflecting Canada's response to U.S. tariffs on steel and aluminum in 2018, where equivalent duties were applied to American goods like bourbon, orange juice, and steel products. Another strategy involves diversifying Canada's energy markets. The country has been investing in infrastructure projects, such as the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion, to increase access to global markets, especially in Asia. This would reduce Canada's reliance on the U.S. as its primary energy customer, providing more flexibility in future trade negotiations. Strengthening domestic energy security is also a priority for Canada. By investing in renewable energy and improving energy efficiency, Canada could reduce its dependency on fossil fuel exports while positioning itself as a leader in the global transition to clean energy. These measures would not only mitigate the impact of trade disputes but also align with Canada's long-term environmental goals. Mexico, in turn, is considering several countermeasures in response to Trump's proposal to impose a 25% tariff on Mexican imports. Aimed at curbing migrant arrivals and the influx of synthetic fentanyl, the tariffs could lead to significant repercussions for both economies. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum has indicated that Mexico may impose reciprocal tariffs on U.S. goods if the U.S. tariffs are enacted, warning that this could escalate into a tit-for-tat trade war that harms businesses operating across both nations. In addition to potential retaliatory tariffs, Mexico is also seeking to strengthen its economic position by reducing its trade deficit with countries like China and attracting foreign investment. President Sheinbaum announced a plan to boost domestic production, particularly in key sectors like automotive and aerospace, as a way to bolster Mexico's economic resilience amid external trade pressures. The Mexican government has warned that the proposed U.S. tariffs could result in the loss of approximately 400,000 U.S. jobs and increase prices for American consumers. These concerns stem from the deep integration of supply chains, particularly in industries like automotive manufacturing, where components often cross the U.S.-Mexico border multiple times during production. In response, Mexico's Economy Minister Marcelo Ebrard has expressed a commitment to finding a diplomatic solution to avoid the implementation of U.S. tariffs, drawing on lessons from previous trade negotiations during Trump's first presidency. Ebrard emphasized the importance of cooperation and mutual understanding in addressing shared challenges like migration and drug trafficking, while also criticizing the renewed protectionist threats, which he believes would harm both economies. Mexico is proactively working to strengthen its economic position amidst potential retaliatory tariffs by addressing its trade deficit with countries like China and attracting foreign investment. President Sheinbaum recently announced a strategy aimed at reducing imports by boosting domestic production, especially in key sectors like automotive and aerospace. This plan is designed to fortify Mexico's economic resilience in the face of external trade pressures. Before we continue, if you're enjoying this video, we'd love to ask for your support. Liking this video helps us reach a wider audience, and sharing your thoughts in the comments amplifies our impact. Thank you for watching. Let's get back to the discussion. Now, let's dive into the volume of U.S. oil imports from different countries. Canada has consistently been the largest supplier of crude oil to the United States, a position it has strengthened over the years. In 2023, the U.S. imported approximately 3.8 million barrels per day from Canada, accounting for over 50% of total U.S. crude oil imports. This figure has risen steadily from around 2.4 million barrels per day in 2010, driven by the expansion of Canada's oil sands production and the development of cross-border pipelines like the Keystone Pipeline. The increase is facilitated by Canada's geographical proximity to the U.S. and the compatibility of its heavy crude oil with U.S. refineries, particularly in the Midwest and Gulf Coast regions, which are optimized to process heavier crude types like those in Canada's oil sands. In 2023, the value of crude oil imports from Canada reached $97.18 billion, underscoring its importance to U.S. energy security. Mexico, the second largest supplier, has been a steady source of heavy crude. In 2023, the U.S. imported 4.261 billion cubic meters of crude oil from Mexico, valued at $2.35 billion. While exports from Mexico have declined since the early 2000s due to production challenges, the country remains a vital supplier. Mexican crude, particularly the heavier Maya blend, is well suited for U.S. refineries. The shared border and trade agreements like the USMCA solidify Mexico's role as a key energy partner. However, concerns about declining production and domestic consumption policies raise questions about Mexico's ability to maintain export levels in the long term. Saudi Arabia, the largest non-North American supplier, continues to play a crucial role. In 2023, the U.S. imported 19.98 billion cubic meters of Saudi crude, valued at $10.81 billion. While imports from Saudi Arabia have declined from peak levels in the early 2000s, the country remains an important supplier due to its large production capacity and high-quality crude oil. The decline in imports is partly due to increased U.S. domestic production, a pivot toward North American suppliers, and shifting geopolitical priorities. However, Saudi Arabia's influence in OPEC and its ability to stabilize global oil markets keep its trade relations with the U.S. significant. Other countries also contribute to U.S. crude oil imports with varying trends. In 2023, the U.S. imported 1.241 billion cubic meters of crude oil from Iraq, valued at $6.1 billion, despite fluctuations due to regional instability. Brazil, with its growing offshore production, supplied 10.65 billion cubic meters of crude, worth $5.9 billion, while Nigeria provided 8.43 billion cubic meters, valued at $473 billion, with its light sweet crude being highly valued. U.S. imports from Venezuela, however, have sharply declined due to sanctions and political turmoil, totaling 7.59 billion cubic meters in 2023. In conclusion, the proposed tariffs by President-elect Donald Trump on major trading partners like Canada, Mexico, and China have raised widespread concerns about their economic fallout, not only for the targeted countries but also for the U.S. and the global economy. The interconnected nature of modern trade makes the impact of protectionist policies far-reaching, leading to retaliatory actions and potential disruptions. As more details emerge about these proposed tariffs and the responses from trading partners, it's clear the consequences could be significant and long-lasting. Canada, as the largest U.S. oil supplier, could counter by reducing oil exports, causing major disruptions in the energy market, particularly in states like Michigan, Wisconsin, and Minnesota. Such a move would increase oil prices and could also lead to retaliatory tariffs on U.S. goods, affecting sectors like agriculture and manufacturing. Mexico, as the second-largest supplier, is prepared to impose reciprocal tariffs, warning that Trump's proposed tariffs could lead to the loss of 400,000 U.S. jobs and a rise in consumer prices. Industries such as automotive manufacturing could be heavily impacted, as parts frequently cross the U.S.-Mexico border multiple times. China, another target of Trump's trade policies, could shift its exports away from the U.S., directing them toward Europe, Asia, and Africa. The U.S.-China trade volume reached approximately $600 billion in 2023, with the U.S. running a trade deficit of $350 billion. A disruption in Chinese exports could affect U.S. industries reliant on goods like electronics, machinery, and rare earth materials. The European Union, another key U.S. trading partner, could also retaliate. With a trade volume exceeding $1.2 trillion in 2023, the EU could impose tariffs on iconic American products like bourbon, motorcycles, and agricultural goods, and potentially target U.S. technology companies operating within Europe. The combined retaliatory measures from Canada, Mexico, China, and the EU could have a severe impact on the U.S. economy, particularly in sectors like agriculture, manufacturing, and technology. These disruptions could lead to job losses, increased consumer costs, and GDP reductions, which would undermine domestic economic stability. As President-elect Donald Trump prepares to take office, the potential implementation of these tariffs and the resulting retaliatory measures are likely to shape the economic landscape for years to come. Thank you for watching. If you found this content valuable, please consider liking and subscribing to stay connected with our community. Your support means a lot to us. Feel free to check out other videos on our channel.